Hi everyone, this is the videos, lectures for, this is now connected to, I believe, translation worksheet 4, and this should have been for week 5, but now because of inclement weather, it's for week 6. So, and as always, I will explain, I will translate, read the Hebrew, and explain aspects of it, some of which I will ask you on the worksheet. So please be at least looking at or filling in the worksheets as you watch the videos. Okay, so now we are in Ruth 3. Remember that Ruth 2, and Ruth really has this kind of lovely kind of beginning and closing to each chapter. Okay, and so you have this like lovely movement, right? So remember that Ruth 1 began on not a high note, but it began okay with this kind of family moving to to another land, to Moab, this Israelite family. It ends on this kind of down slope, right, where everybody dies off. All the men of the family die, and therefore the women that are left over are forced to return back to Israel. And when they return, it ends, chapter 1 ends with these women that surround Ruth and Naomi saying, don't call me Naomi because my life has, not been pleasant. And it ends with this little line about how Naomi and Ruth dwelt together, right? So there's two women, right? And of course, this is a contrast between the full family and now, two widows remain. Similarly, in the next chapter, Ruth 2, right, you have this again, it begins on kind of a slightly different, right? It begins again on a kind of high note, right? Where Ruth says she's going to glean, right? So it looks great, right? She's gleaning, she's succeeding, she's meets, the right person who helps her glean enough food for her and her mother to survive. And yet at the end of Ruth 2, right, you again have this kind of return to descent down and returning to this kind of threatened state where the harvest is now over. So Ruth and Naomi again are shown to kind of be dwelling, two widows again, dwelling by themselves with the possibility of future food scarcity. Okay, so it has this kind of lovely pattern. Okay, and now Ruth 3, of course, right? Because this is the kind of highlight. We'll see if it has that same pattern. Okay, and then again begins on a kind of upslope. Okay, um, because of the fact that the harvest is coming to an end. As I stated in the preceding video, Naomi seems to realize that she needs to, that things need to hurry up, that she cannot quite wait for Boaz, who is a redeemer, to make her move. Or another way to put it is that Naomi realizes that she cannot really wait for this kind of divine plan that she has sussed out, right? So she sees that God is working, but she can't wait for God to take God's time doing it, right? Or, another way to put it is she realizes that God's plan needs a little bit of push. Okay, God helps those who help themselves, right? Okay, so and that's where you begin with Ruth 3:1. Okay, so Vatomer lah Naomi hamotah. So Naomi begins, right? So and she said to her, that is Naomi, her mother-in-law. Okay, BT, my daughter. Okay, and again, it's there's been questions interpreters have tried to figure out, what exactly is the nature of the relationship between these two women. I will say that my own interpretation, you don't have to take this one, is that Naomi consistently refers to Ruth as BT. Okay, and it's really the narrator that refers to Ruth as the Moabitess, right? And so, I mean, I do think, according to Naomi's vision, Ruth is the only one that's remained of her family, and so really, Ruth is her family. Okay, and I think the BT language kind of reflects that. Okay, so and she said, right? So Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, that is to Ruth, BT, my daughter. Okay, Hello, abakesh lach manoach. Okay, asher yitav lach. Okay, So this is this right here is the interrogative marker, right? This is how in Hebrew you would ask a question, right? Because of course in Hebrew there are no punctuation. Okay, sorry. So you do that, this, this ha at the beginning or end of things, they do a lot, right? In the beginning of things, this is a question. Is it not, right? With a negation, right? Hello. So is it not? Is it not the case, right? That I should, and bakash really means to seek, okay, or search for, to kind of, dig around for, okay? Should I not seek for you? And now this very interesting word that I ask you about, manoach, right? So you can translate it as a home. In the midst of this word is the word to rest, nuach, right? And it's not just like, oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna rest. It's a kind of almost divine rest, the kind of a secure rest, a rest that is goes beyond just being tired and being this is not a cat nap kind of rest. This is a kind of, everything is okay, everything is well, I am secure, I have enough to eat, I am safe, is that kind of rest, a resting place, but with, in some ways, more significance. Okay, so so I mean, it's interesting that she uses this word, right? Because she doesn't say, is it not time I seek for you a home, a house, right? She could have said bait, right? They are in Bethlehem, right? The house of food. Instead she says a resting place, and again, it seems to imply, right, that Naomi, of course, and Ruth, as related to Naomi, really they are still in this very precarious place, right? So she's not necessarily just seeking a home for Ruth per se. She's seeking a place where they can be secure, right? Where they can not be in need, right? Where they can have enough food, where they don't have to worry season from season, right? Whether they are going to survive, okay? Like I said, the root of this word, manoach, is nun, vav, het, noach, and it should remind you of a biblical character because it is the name of a biblical character. This is Noah's name, Noach, right? Which is interesting, right? Because that was also about a kind of divine rest that follows from God's annihilation of the universe, but a rest, right? It's that kind of quiet, okay, that's being referred to here, okay? You see this word again in Genesis 8:9, again in the Noah story, when a dove is sent by Noah to see if the waters have receded, and we are told that he can find no resting place. Okay, so and again, the use of this word manoah, fits in with this theme, right, that you see throughout Ruth. This focus on, finding a place of security and safety, of a place where you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid that you're going to run out of things, right? And interestingly, the kind of beauty of Ruth is that it focuses on outsiders who don't feel this. Okay, or maybe even outsiders such as Ruth, a foreigner who do not feel secure in their new land, as well as insiders, right, like Naomi, who also, for different reasons, are marginalized and do not feel secure, do not find safety and plenty in their own land. Okay. And so, and if so, you have this kind of, again, kind of lovely riffing, right, that people have written about how Ruth is both the outsider, both the other, and also symbolic of Israel. My suspicion is in exile, where they don't have a Noach, right, where they're not home, they're away from their home. Okay, and again, there's lots of debates about dating, but is this edited? Certainly, probably, from a time when the Israelites are displaced, right? When they have been scattered, like the seeds here, right? There's this interesting scattering language, right? And Naomi and Ruth, the insider and outsider, both become, right, symbolic of the state of Israel. Okay, Israel in exile. Okay. So she says, you can translate it differently. Is it not time that I seek for you a resting place, a home, right? so that or that it literally says it will be good for you. Okay, you can kind of loosely translate or make it prettier, so that you will be well provided for, right? So that you will have a future. There's almost that sense, right? And of course, again, by saying, this little line, yitab lock, of course, it implies that things haven't they haven't died of starvation, right? But that things have not been necessarily the best for them still, right? They're still in an extremely precarious situation. Okay, and of course, unfortunately, in this patriarchal setting, the only way two women can find kind of safety, right, is if they are protected by men, right? And then you can see why in such a context, right, why God would be almost certainly imagined as a male. Okay. Okay, so going onwards. Okay, so vata halo Boaz modatanu. Okay, and notice again, this is a breaking of the va consecutive chain, right? That began here. Okay, so there was a little bit of emphasis here. Okay, and now ata, hello, another interrogative, right? Is it not? Okay, is not Boaz? Okay, and now mudatanu. Okay, our kin. Remember, last time I spoke about how, underneath this word, this is a participle because it has this name, is the word yod dalet ayin. And yod dalet ayin will be used in a variety of ways, in this passage, in this section. Do I ask you about this? Yes. Okay. So I will get to that when I come here, where again, you see yada, right? So here, this is, you can go with, isn't our kin, isn't he somebody who knows us? It literally means knows us, right? But as I will go on to explain, knowledge is not just somebody who is like a friend, right? It's somebody who knowledge has this kind of sexual connotation, and that's where you get kind of an expansion of modatanu from someone who just is our friend to our family, a potential family, but also somebody related to us. That is, what is family? But people that are related to you via kinship and sexuality. Okay, tie, blood. Okay. Okay, so going onwards. Okay, so she says, now isn't Boaz our kin, right? Somebody who knows us, our family member. Okay, now I guess you could go with our friend. That would also kind of make sense. Okay. Okay. Asher Asher hayit et na'arotav. And weren't you? I would kind of continue on to kind of make it pretty. Weren't you one of his young women, right? Weren't you treated like one of his servant girls? Okay, and notice what Naomi is doing, right? Naomi is going to propose something audacious, right? And extremely risky, right? So she's in some ways trying to sell this to Ruth, right? And hoping, so she's kind of emphasizing the closeness that Boaz has, right, with Ruth, in the hopes that she can kind of persuade Ruth to do this very, very daring, act. Okay. And didn't he treat you like one of his own servant girls, right? Which in this, of course, society, your servant girls would be part of your household, right? So, the text really is playing with kind of, I said blood earlier, kind of immediate kin and sort of larger ideas of family. Right. So the servants and the slaves, right, in the society where they had slaves, would be treated as a member of family, the family part of this patriarchal household, right, called the Beit Ah, the house of the father. Okay. And remember that Israel is structured in what they call an embedded household structure, right, where like those like Maroshka dolls, those little dolls, where each, there's this ever expanding circle, okay, of households that grow bigger, from family to like clan to tribe to the nation, right? Each headed by a patriarch. Okay, so that's the way that society was structured, right? So, Naomi is really saying, aren't you already like treated like part of the family anyways? Okay, again, she's trying to persuade Ruth to do what is a very dangerous act. Okay, so therefore, right, continuing onwards, hine hu zore et goren ha sorim halayla. Now, hine, like I said, I don't know if I did this video, hine is usually translated as behold, but there is lots of different ways to translate hine. And for me, it emphasizes something, or another way that a scholar has put it is that it focalizes something. It draws particular attention to whatever the hinaying is being done to. Okay, so that means when you translate it, you have a wide variety of options as to how to translate this. I always go with now because I say now all the time. Okay, but you can do something else. Okay, so isn't he one of our family members, and didn't he already treat you like one of his servant girls? Now therefore, now indeed, okay, so you need to somehow emphasize it somehow. Okay, now he happens to be, right, zoreh, right, winnowing. Okay, this means scattering. Okay, but this has can actually have sexual connotations. Notice that zorah from Zion Resh hey, which means to scatter seeds, right, can be a euphemism for scattering seeds sexually, right? Moreover, right, and I think it's deliberately related if you just change one tiny letter of Zara, right, from Zion Resh Hey to Zion Resh Ayin, Zarah, okay? What's a zoreh, what I mean, with an ayin? Well, it's a seed, right, which of course again has a euphemistic literally it means seeds, and is euphemistically used to also describe or talk about semen. Okay, so there's lots of like sexualized double entendre fertility language here, right? Isn't he, so you can go with, isn't he winnowing or isn't he scattering, right? You can also go with, isn't he now scattering his seeds? Okay, at the threshing floor, right? At the Goren, okay, and I will ask about the Goren a little bit later, right? At the threshing floor, that is the seeds of the barley tonight, this very night, okay? So isn't he winnowing, the looser translation is, isn't he winnowing the barley tonight? Okay, but literally it's, isn't he scattering his seeds this very night? Okay. Of course, this is all a lovely setup for what's to come, okay? And she may be kind of winking here, right? And of course, in traditional society, it would not be unheard of for older women to give younger women, kind of advice on flirtation, sexuality, right? They're in charge of kind of, maybe passing on, talking to you about the birds and the bees, that kind of stuff, even now, I think, right? So it may be that there is, you're supposed to read this with a lot more subtext, right? I mean, desperation, yes, because they're hungry, right? But also the subtext where she's kind of winking, Naomi that is winking at Ruth and saying, well, you know what he's doing and you know where he's gonna be, so you have to do this, okay? Okay, so I'm going to stop there and I will go on to the next video.